Hello and welcome back to More Than a Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-League and more. Today on the show, Man City are back in touch after their rivals dropped points, and Curtis Jones, Sean Longstaff and Bruno Fernandes let fly overnight. I'm Colby, and I'm joined by Damo and Jesse to recap a wild night in the Premier League. But first, Damo, let's go to you. You had your eyes on the AFL Grand Final last night with your D's first flag since, I don't know, sometime in the 60s. Mate, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, I got a bit saucy last night, so the head was a bit sore this morning, and I had to wake up and catch up on a lot of football and rewatch the Grand Final this morning just to make sure it actually happened. So yeah, great night.
And Jesse, you were catching the festivities as well. Also had a pretty frothy night. We all caught up over Zoom, watched a bit of the Premier League, a bit of the AFL Grand Final. How's your head this morning,
mate? I was like that Dizzy Boy gif all night, basically last night. There was rugby league, there was rugby, there's All Blacks, there was the AFL, and then that was all before the football. And obviously, none of my teams were playing, obviously, in the grand final, but it was such an epic game that had me all over the show. And that was all before I had a monitor and a second screen watching Chelsea, Man City, and the Man United game at the same time. And I just sat there and I'm like, I'm in a sports bar. This is YouTube. This is
the boys had a few wild setups going on in their house. Yours in particular, Jesse, that you just mentioned. You had some screens on boxes on chairs, and every screen that you could get in your house was basically in front of you. I think we all had the same situation on, like laptops and phones and just whatever we could get in front of us. Plenty coming up on the show today. As I said at the top, wild weekend in the Premier League. I don't think there was a bad game out there. Let's start with our moments of the week, though, Damo.
My moment of the week, easy, the low-hanging fruit would be to talk about the AFL, but this is a football pod, so I have some moments of the week of the round ball variety to talk about, and there was plenty of them last night, and I'm going to go with Daniel Maldini making his full debut at AC Milan and scoring. He's the first three-generation family to ever play for a Serie A club. Obviously, the son of Paolo Maldini, and I can't remember the name of Paolo Maldini's father, but they both captained Italy, both captained Milan. So Daniel's got a lot to live up to, and if his full debut's got anything to go by, he's going to have a good career himself. So that's pretty cool to see. And I think my favorite part was the vision of his dad in the stands when he saw his son score. And the caption was, when you have to try and create a history of your own.
Well, he's quite a beautiful man as well. And that bodes well for a great career off the pitch as well.
He's got it all sorted. Jesse, how about yourself, mate?
Well, in this week's edition of 2-in-1 Moment of the Week, brought to you by Head and Shoulders. Actually, it's a hybrid moment of the week with own goal, which we all love. And what we also love on More Than a Game is some really top-level shithousery. And into Emi Martinez. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't catch it, if you were watching the Chelsea-Man City game and you missed the Man United game, make sure you go back and have a look. Obviously, it was the Bruno missed pen, but it was everything that happened before the pen. It was Martinez getting in Bruno's face, and then actually, instead of targeting Bruno anymore, who had already taken the ball under his wing, he started calling out Ronaldo and saying, "No, I want you. I want you." And he was saying to him, "You take it. You take it." And this is all right in Bruno's face at the same time. So he was effectively sledging two blokes at the same time. And then he manages to put him off. And for that reason, it seemed like Bruno basically thought, I have to put this top bins, otherwise this guy's going to save it. And instead he put it, he sent it all the way back to Aston Villa. So it was just so good. Such high level shithousery, but also the own goal obviously goes to Bruno for missing. I also just wanted to throw in, just in general, how good football was this weekend. We complain sometimes about games being really dull, but the quality of the football, the end-to-end nature of some of these games. I watched Leeds, West Ham last night, the Brentford game, and then obviously Newcastle Watford was end to end as well. So it was just I think it was all summarized with that moment where both Klopp and is it Thomas Frank both looked at each other after one of those missed chances, and they both kind of just smiled and winked at each other when the game was 3-3. So yeah, I think the managers were having fun, and I think that sort of showed how enjoyable it was to watch.
Yeah, how good's football? But back on Emi Martinez, Jesse, I mean, I don't know a bigger dark arts specialist in the league at the moment. He's an absolute sorcerer. Some of the shit he's doing. Like, don't forget, he was doing this in the Copa America as well when he put Yerry Mina off and saved a couple as well. But how does the man get in people's heads so well?
Absolutely rent-free in Bruno's. I mean, the amount of damage he's done in one moment, like now, like there's this massive like debacle about is Ronaldo going to take the next one because Bruno missed that one, and yeah, like he's just opened up a massive can of worms beyond this game. So it's sort of like a never-ending spiral that Martinez has set United into. More
on that later. Damo, your own goal. Your own goal, yes.
Yeah, my own goal this week was, for a bit of context, Samir Nasri announced his retirement today. And my own goal was that he was still playing football until today. So he should have retired a few years ago. A bit of trivia for you. Where do you think Samir Nasri's been playing for the last couple of years?
Did he go to MLS?
No,
I'm gonna say like
I actually had no idea where he'd been.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
So he left West Ham in 2019, and he went to Anderlecht in Belgium, and he's played 7 games since he went there. So he effectively retired in 2019. So I don't know why he's announcing it today. So that's my own goal.
I thought he retired at West Ham.
You could say before West Ham. He only played half a dozen games there as well, didn't he?
Poor lad. Some players just fall off a cliff, and he's one of them, and perhaps one that could have been in our players that fell from grace quite quickly. Little Twitter discussion the other week. Boys, I realised I've forgotten to give a moment of the week, and I want to go back to it because I want to shout out our boy Jared Gillett becoming the first non-Brit to ref a Premier League game overnight. He reffed the Watford-Newcastle game. Just amazing that this is an Aussie made here in the A-League. He did it all, reffing grand finals, won ref of the year, goes over to the UK, refs in the lower divisions, does VAR, and now becomes the first foreigner and first Aussie to ref a Premier League game as the main ref. So, I mean, what a moment.
Yeah, big time.
Brisbane boy, I think, too, Colby. Crafted his home on the fields in the bumpy fields in Cooperoo with barely any turf on them.
Yep. In the heat as well and the humidity. And a little one as well for a little lad, just to shout out Cammy Devlin, got man of the match in his starting debut for Hearts in the Scottish Premier League in their 3-0 win overnight. Got gassed up all over social media, including by the official account. So, yeah, it'd be good to keep watching what he does and what Jared Gillett does as well. Both doing great things in the UK. Jesse, you've given a bit of an own goal. You've given a hybrid, haven't you? So why don't we move on? Just a few news items, boys. I thought I'd throw out there because there's been a bit of Australian football news, and not the AFL variety, unfortunately, Damo. But the new A-League season, there's been a new start date announced. It's going to be 19 November, which is 3 weeks after the originally planned start date of 29 October. And we've had some fixtures released. I think just the first 6 rounds of fixtures have been officially released. But there's a lot of questions over how this is going to work. And there was a good article in the Sydney Morning Herald from Regari and Don Bossi talking about like how they're going to do it with the borders closed and COVID still sort of out of control in Vic and New South Wales. I think they're going to play in conferences. There's going to be a New South Wales and Wellington conference, and then like an everyone else conference. I think played in Victoria, this other one. So it's looking like it'll end up being a situation like in the UK where you've got double vax fans allowed to attend, but not sure where this leaves players who don't want to be vaccinated themselves. What do you reckon should happen to those players, and where are we going to see James Troisi this season, boys?
I think on the vaccinated side of things, I think what's going to start happening more and more is whether people like it or not, it's going to be part of the requirement of joining a company. If you want to join, basically start most new jobs, you're going to need to be vaccinated. So I don't see why football is any different. I think if you join if you're a professional football player and you want to go around the world and go to different countries, be let into different countries, but also even just to play domestically, you're going to need to be vaccinated. So I think if you don't choose to be vaccinated, which I expect to be in the minority anyway, you're going to get ostracized from the squad probably, and basically your employer is probably going to say, well, either get vaccinated or you're not going to be able to travel around the country. So I think on the footballer side of thing, it should be ironed out pretty quickly, because I think it'll become mandatory. I think at the moment we're in a teething period, but I think it will just become mandatory. But for the fans, I think that considering the amount of case numbers that there still are, we will have to have some form of vax passport to go to these games, I expect. Yeah.
It's just going to be a logistical nightmare, isn't it? We've seen different sports leagues do different things. Obviously, the NRL have had their hub up in Queensland in relative normality, you could call it, but it's still very different. And then the AFL have tried to let teams stay in their own places, and they did a similar thing, releasing 2 to 3 weeks of fixtures at a time and not really getting ahead of themselves, and players getting exemptions to travel state to state. So it's got to be really interesting what I guess what the APL are able to sort of come to agreements with state governments, because that's really what is going to dictate where and when the games are going to be played, is what agreement the APL can make with different state governments, which will be really interesting to see, because obviously the AFL's got a lot of pull power and could get a lot done. I don't feel as though the APL and the A-League players will get the same liberties as AFL. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited that we've now got a start date that they're confident they're going to make. There was never really any confidence they were going to make the 29th of October. So it's exciting. It's good to know proper fixtures and who you're going to be playing, and it kind of makes it feel real. So hopefully things can kick off and then the season can start, and hope we can have a relatively normal season.
Colby, does the fact that it's been played in sort of summer just slide, under the radar a bit here, or is that also being talked about in soccer Twitter?
After all of the banter about a winter season and we're moving to winter, inevitably we're sliding further and further back to the old summer kickoffs.
Wasn't the winter season a deal breaker? Like, the new broadcast partner had to agree that it was a winter season?
I think that can's been kicked down the road just because of this situation, because this was already always going to be like the halfway house season, and then I think it was going to be a quick turnaround, wasn't it, next year to start in winter, but like no idea where that plan's up to at the moment. But yeah, good point, Jesse. I think that one's on the back burner at the moment for sure. And we've had some further news on the broadcast deal as well. You mentioned that before, boys. The APL this week announced further details of the new Channel 10 and Paramount Plus broadcast deal. There's going to be simultaneous games on Saturday night with kickoffs and live goal updates from both games. I'm hearing Tommy shouting "Goal Rush" from his house right as we speak.
A-League Goal Rush. Tommy couldn't
A-League
want anything
Goal
more.
Rush. Tommy is just beside himself with excitement, being the biggest fan of Goal Rush that we know. So there's gonna be like multi-screen viewing options across Network 10 and Paramount Plus, and then there's going to be one A-League game on Channel 10 free to air per week, and one W League game on 10 Bold, which again is still a little bit disappointing that we've got W League on the sort of back channel, or not the main Channel 10 channel, but we can talk about that some more. That's still an issue that is not the best outcome. But thoughts on this more generally, boys?
I think the simultaneous kickoffs it's clever from I guess Channel 10's perspective in how they're going to do it, because and I think it was mentioned, we were talking about it in a group chat. What I can see is two games running parallel. Let's say it's Brisbane and City, and then Victory and Wanderers is exclusively on the app. The game on Channel 10 isn't real great, but they keep cutting to the game on the app because there's so many goals, but it's behind a paywall. If someone wants to watch it, they're going to have to go and sign up to watch the game. So it's a kind of cross promotion, but promoting your own product to get people to sign up to watch the rest of the game. So I feel that's the main intention of doing it, as well as if there is a boring game on TV, at least while you're watching it, you're seeing goals and updates from a game that might not be boring. So it's kind of a way to draw in what you would say wouldn't be your normal football watching folk, to try and make it a little bit more exciting for them. So all in all, I think it's going to be pretty cool to see how it all plays out. But I'm excited to see the broadcast and how they do it and kind of what happens.
I think you pretty much nailed it there, Damo. I think the one thing I'd also add to that is the apps are getting better and better at, depending on the level of membership, if you can split your screen. And, like KO obviously for a long time has had that ability to watch two things at once on the same screen. So you do also get a dynamic where you want to cross. If you obviously have paid for it, you can cross between the two games, and you want to check the score. And if you want to get clever, you can even have the two things running by each other at the same time. I think that's just great because, as I said, I mentioned at the start of the call, if you can't go out to the bar as much as you used to, having a bit of a sports bar element at home is the next best thing.
Boys, it also makes me feel hopeful that we may get a final day with every game kicking off at the same time. The only reason we've never had it before was because Foxtel and the broadcast deal had to have individual kickoffs so they could broadcast every game individually. So it gives me hope that if they're running concurrent games out of their own will, then they might agree to having a final day where we all kick off at the same time. And that would be really exciting.
And particularly if it's popular, Damo, like you say, like if they suddenly discover that they're onto something with this formula, the double game on the Saturday night, they're only releasing 6 fixtures at once. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this this year's fixture, I guess. So, I mean, yeah, we like in theory, it's open to them at the end of the season to do that. So that's really exciting. And I mean, I'm just excited that instead of getting Big Bash and like NRL ads in the middle of the A-League, we're going to be, getting A-League ads in the middle of the A-League. So it can only be a good thing. And I think just going back to the summer point that Jesse mentioned before, like more games on a Saturday night in summer, that helps as well. Like, fewer earlier kickoffs and things. Saturday nights have typically been the better games for attendance, like better than Sundays and the odd weeknights and things like that. So yeah, I reckon they might be onto a winner here. Coming up next, Premier League Match Day 6. Boys, we're going to start off with Brentford and Liverpool first. It was a first big test for Brentford, who hosted Liverpool in West London, and they bloody stood up to the test. I'll tell you what, like this game, as I think we mentioned it, Jesse, you might have mentioned it at the top, just wild. Like in the first 10 minutes, you've got a clearance off the line at either end. Brentford go up ahead early via a set piece where the ball just dribbles across the 6-yard box to the back post for a tap in. What's Fabinho doing for that one, Jesse?
He's trying to do a handbrake turn and he's stuck in parallel park. He can't get out of neutral, so it was a bit like Matip later in the game where he did the 360 clearance off the line as well. So yeah, mobility was a little bit of a factor there.
Well, we know about Matip's turning circle, but yeah, that was interesting from Fabinho. Liverpool would equalise pretty much straight away through a pretty clinical Jota header. Jota had another chance just before half-time, but great reaction save from David Raya. Jesse, what did you think of David Raya's performances throughout this game?
Yeah, it was pretty outrageous. I think it's easy in a game if a goalkeeper makes one of those. You're sort of like, oh, was it a bit of a fluke? you can see that wasn't a fluke for him. I mean, he had just a hell of a performance across the board and all sorts of different saves. In fact, he probably would have saved the Curtis Jones banger if the defender didn't lift it over him. So, yeah, I think he had a cracking game, which always seems to be the way with Liverpool. We always end up playing the team where the goalkeeper has the game of his life, unfortunately. But no, yeah, I think he was definitely one of Brentford's best by a mile.
Yeah, he did have a fantastic game, and then Liverpool would go up, of course, through Salah. Who else? It was an offside goal that was eventually overturned by the VAR. He was played on by Sergi Canos at right back, but Brentford just wouldn't go away. Your boys, Damo, they got back in the 63rd minute through Vitaly Janelt. Bit of a goal scramble, but this was just the way with Brentford today. Like every one of their goals just seemed like they just wanted it more.
Yeah, I think this game showed a completely different side to Brentford that we haven't seen all year. They conceded more goals last night. They conceded 3 last night, and they'd only conceded 2 in their first 5 games combined. So their season so far had been built on not conceding goals, scoring the odd goal, and then kind of defending a lead. So it showed something that we haven't seen from them all year, is that little bit of resolve to how do you react when you put in a situation where you go behind. They were in front, then they went behind, and they went behind again, and they're able to claw their way back into the game. So I think if I was a Brentford fan right now, I would be overjoyed with that result, regardless of the performance. You showed a little something that you need to kind of stay in the Premier League and make yourself a Premier League club.
The resilience was there to see, and I thought this afternoon it came across my mind is that it was calculated carnage by Brentford, but like doubling up on Trent so that he's overwhelmed, and then the ball spews down, and then it's just who's the nearest there to put it away. They did that essentially almost 3 times in a row. It was just overwhelming the defense, but in a smart way, targeting the areas where there wasn't enough players and sort of getting the double up. So you can see that Frank's a clever coach when you really look at it.
I think calculated carnage is such a good way to describe it, Jesse. And I hadn't thought of that before, but that's absolutely what it was. It was the doubling up and tripling up sometimes on Trent and others across that back 4, and just throwing bodies forward when they needed to. They just threw everyone forward, but not unnecessarily so. And it was all calculated risks and carnage at times as well. But just what a wild and entertaining game. Did anything else stand out to you in this one, Damo?
It's a bit of a recurring theme for me with goalkeepers across games this weekend that I felt could have done better. Curtis Jones obviously was a hell of a strike, but Jesse, you mentioned it before. I felt like Raya, it was his near post. He should be covering that. The ball's come from a long way. It's a good 25 to 30 yards. And it was rising. It was at a good height for a goalkeeper. So I'm not sure if there was a slight deflection or what it was that might have put him off. But one of many occasions this weekend where I think goalkeepers could have done better. But like you said, overall, he had a great game. So can't really fault him.
Yeah, I think in his defense on this occasion, he got really stitched up by the defender, because the defender didn't just get a nick. They altered the speed of the ball as well. I'm not sure which defender it was, but basically they kind of needed to trust the goalkeeper a bit more. I think he just swung a foot at it out of panic, and that stitched his goalkeeper up a bit. At least I'll have to go back and watch it again, but that was my first take on it. Yeah.
I tell you what, I've watched a few of these games multiple times over the course of today, getting ready for this pod. Usually, it's less, but some of these games were so good, and this one was no exception. The only other thing to mark in this game was just Salah getting to the 100 top flight goals for Liverpool, fastest in the club's history. So that's huge, and great for a one season wonder, I suppose.
I was waiting for that comment.
2017's Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
Next up was the one of the first games of the weekend, that double kickoff. United hosted Villa and went down 1-0 through to a Courtney Horse I think, header at the near post from a late set piece. But then later still, there was a handball, pen awarded to United. Of course, they're going to get a late pen. Ronaldo still on the pitch. We mentioned it earlier, Jesse, through your own goal / moment of the week. Bruno Fernandes steps up and misses it after some smack talk from Emi Martinez, and now everyone's just talking about like what's going to happen, who's going to take the next pen. What do you expect to happen, Damo?
Oh, it's been so strange. I was looking at Twitter and there's videos on TikTok. It's hilarious. Some of the theories people are making that, Bruno missed on purpose, and there's people analyzing the way he kicked the ball, and then like his follow through, he aimed over the bar, and he missed on purpose because they want Ronaldo on penalties, but they couldn't justify it, or they want Solskjaer gone, so they wanted to lose the game. It's just hilarious. I mean, at the end of the day, I just think that the occasion or the importance of that going in the back of the net really got to Bruno, and we haven't seen that before. And he looked nervous as he stepped up over the ball. He changed his routine. He usually does that little bounce, that little trundle before he goes up to the ball, and didn't do that. And he never goes high. And it was, whether it was Martinez in his head, whether it was knowing that behind him is Cristiano Ronaldo, who's desperate to take the penalties, that he has to score. It just felt like there was more pressure on that penalty than there ever has been on one of his penalties. And it got to him.
He usually goes bottom as well. That's the other thing. Like you very rarely see, like he's very good at, in open play at banging at top corner, but you don't see him often take a penalty top corner, Bruno. So that's why, I think Martinez got in his head where he's like, I think I have to put this top corner to bury this, and he couldn't do it. The thing I was going to say in response to your original query there, Colby, is that I actually think this is kind of the perfect outcome for Ollie, because it's like basically the decision is taken away from him. He's been getting like pelted left, right, and center about why isn't Ronaldo going to take the pens, and he's like, well, Bruno's the incumbent, this sort of thing. And I actually think this gives it the perfect excuse now, where he's like, I'm going to defend Bruno all week, and then when we get closer to the next game, it's like, well, if a player of Ronaldo's caliber wants to take them, then we'll allow him to, and he can kind of just like massage it the way he wants, and then ultimately we'll see Ronaldo probably taking penalties next time, and it won't be such a huge drama. I think in a weird way, it takes the decision off Ole, is what I'm saying. Like he doesn't have to be like, I'm going to throw Bruno under the bus. Bruno's already thrown himself under the bus. So it makes it easier for him.
Yeah, it's weird though. It's a weird one to have, because Bruno had such a good record of penalties before this miss. And, it was just the Ronaldo factor as to why there was any pressure on him at all. But yeah, now I suppose you're right. It has to be Ronaldo, but yeah, seems a bit harsh on Bruno, but we're all living for the social media around it, I suppose. And just on taking a step back, boys, good win for Villa, you have to say. 1-0. A lot of people tipping them to make Europe this year. They're up to 8th now. Do you see them, continuing that run, boys?
Who was the guy with the long hair and the beard? Is that the set piece coach that was up and about with Dean Smith? I don't know if it actually is the set piece coach. I have to put that as a disclaimer, but I was kind of wanting it to be, because the guy was just like jumping around like a cannon the whole time. And when Villa scored in the last couple of minutes, he was like running up and down the touch line and fist pumping with Dean Smith. So either he's one of Dean's best mates, or he's set piece coach. It's one of the two.
That's I think United probably need a defense against the dark arts coach on their staff, though, don't they?
Well, can we just take a moment to acknowledge that Harry Maguire is so different in a Man United shirt than when he's in an England shirt? Like some of the errors that guy's making in a United shirt is just like, he's putting his teammates under pressure. He's putting himself under immense pressure at times. And, Damo, we know he's a very, very top level player, and his performances in the Euros showed that, but he's copping a bit of flack at the moment. And I think, to be fair, he's kind of bringing it on himself and trying to play in situations where maybe he shouldn't. mean, De Gea made an absolute meal of his back pass. So both of those players are at fault in that instance. But yeah, Maguire just looks like he's a bit rattled at times where, I don't know, I'm not sure why he's playing the passes in those situations.
Yeah, I've almost got the feeling that Maguire's is going through a little bit of a patch similar to Kane, and they're just burnt out. They've played so much football because from the back end of last season, from January onwards last season, he was arguably one of the best defenders in the league in a Manchester United top. And then that form continued into the Euros, and we all know what happened at the Euros and the disappointment for England. And it's like that has taken an effect on a few of the English players that are almost burnt out physically and emotionally from everything that happened over the last couple of 12 months. But yeah, you're right. This, I'm a huge fan of Harry Maguire. I think he's, a top level defender. But this year, you're right. He really has. It's almost like his decision making is letting him down. But in saying that, I think the goal that actually was Harry Maguire was. You couldn't really say at fault. I don't know who you'd say was at fault for that set piece apart from De Gea. He was, and it was funny because Ollie, I think in the post-match press conference said that the goal was offside and, it's a hard result to take when that happens. And then there was all this argument that the Villa forward was holding on to De Gea and pulling him out of position. And I mean, if you go back and watch, De Gea steps off his post where a goalkeeper should be in that scenario, steps off his post to walk 1.5 meters to his left to grab onto the attacker and try and shove him out of the way. And then as he tries to get back to where he should be standing, the ball's already in the back of the net. So De Gea's left his post literally to go and push the attacker. And then he's gone back and then he wants to complain that the attacker was holding on to him. It's De Gea again. I don't know what goes through his mind sometimes. He thinks he's a midfielder playing in goals.
And whether he's right or he's wrong or something like good or bad, he's done something right or wrong. Like you're still like right at the end of the game, last kick of the game almost against Aston Villa at home, and you haven't put him away when you've got Ronaldo, Sancho, Fernandes. Well,
United had 28 shots.
Stacked team. Yeah,
United had 28 shots, and I think only 3 or 4 on target. So, same
with the West Ham game midweek. He was quoting having 20 plus shots, but what he left out of that comment was how many were on target. And I think during the week it was only like 4 or 5 as well. So there's plenty of volume, but they're all just into defenders. Like Ronaldo pretty much summed it up. Every shot he took, Mings was in the way, and he couldn't really make a threat out of anything.
I'm not sure if you guys have seen this. It's a fallout that's happening on Twitter, kind of about when Solskjaer was asked about his philosophy to football. Have you seen this fallout? So the tweet started with what he said in the post-match press conference interview, and then that went on to another comment that he made. And a reporter asked him, you're the one of only 2 managers who've ever managed a team worth £1 billion, €1 billion. The other one is Pep Guardiola, and we all know what his philosophy in football is. What's yours? And his response was really strange. He went on to say that football's a really simple game. People talk about all the intricacies of football, but it's really just about your passion and your desire and who wants to win. So it's kind of, he has no tactical philosophy to how he's trying to go about this. Manchester United are building him a super team with all this talent, but then they're doing nothing with it. Obviously we can see what Manchester City are doing with their side, and we know how they approach football. Manchester United just put 11 stars on the pitch, and Ollie just says, go and do your thing. It feels, because that's why there's no link up. That's why the things aren't clicking. And that's why there's little mistakes are happening. It just really feels like there's no sort of direction in how Manchester United are playing football. And if there was, that team would nearly be unbeatable.
Well, in that context, Damo, you say that Ole's been backed in the transfer window. You're right. They've brought in a World Cup winner, a generational talent, and one of the best players to play the game in our generation. And yet we still don't know what the team's doing we don't know what Ole's philosophy is or tactics are even.
And he doesn't know.
What's he
clearly
doing with it? He doesn't seem to know. United have lost 3 on the bounce, or 3 or 4 in all competitions now, and they're about to head into a super busy period with Champions League games that are must win because of that loss against Young Boys last week, and they've got Liverpool coming up in the league, Spurs, Leicester City. A lot of tough games in there, but when does the pressure really start to crank up on Ole then in the context of all of that?
Well, I mean, Ole's at the wheel, but I mean, I can't remember which speed movie it was when the bus has, no brakes, but he's at the wheel of a bus that has no brakes and could blow up at any time.
Yeah, I mean, look, the pressure on Man United is always ridiculously high. We know that the expectation of that club is to win everything, and particularly this year, the pressure is really on them. And I mean, if you take a step back from what's expected of that team and what's expected of Solskjaer, Man United is still only 1 point off the top. They're still in every cup competition. It's very early on in the season. Teams have hiccups. At the end of the day, this isn't the end of the world. But when it's Man United, it snowballs really, really quickly when you lose games. So that's the problem being at Manchester United.
Mm.
Well, let's shift gears, boys, to just another bloody fun game. Leicester Burnley 2-2. It was just Cornet and Vardy just putting on a show. This one started off. There was that own goal off Vardy early on, heads it into his own net. Quite a good finish.
He scored the perfect hat trick, Jamie Vardy.
Yep. And then he goes and immediately levels with a nice finish, first time across goal on the break, and then gives the Burnley fans the old chat shit get banged goal celebration. Corner then with that beautiful volley and just the little calm celebration. Vardy then rounds the keeper with 5 minutes to go, and then goes back to the Burnley fans and points to the name on the back of his shirt. What a contest, boys! Jamie Vardy, we thought that this would be the season where Leicester were going to stop needing him as much, but he's got 7 in his last 7 appearances and showing no signs of slowing down, Damo.
Yeah, this was vintage Jamie Vardy performance. This was the Jamie Vardy from 2016, 2017, when everyone was like, how does he do this? He just seems to keep doing it. How old is he now? 32 years old, nearly 33. He's still heavily reliant on his speed and just his attitude to the game. I love it sometimes. It would frustrate me if I was a Leicester fan, but man, it's entertaining to watch.
On a scale of 1 to that case of wine vintage that you've got in your hallway to celebrate the grand final, Damo, how vintage was this of Jamie Vardy? I mean,
nearly a 95 drop.
95 red. Like death taxes and through ball to Jamie Vardy. I mean, and it didn't matter which player it was. I think it was Iheanacho that gave him the second pass. It's like, it doesn't matter who is in the team. It's just give it to Vardy. But he's still, and what's interesting as well is that he makes sometimes goalkeepers who are pretty good goalkeepers look very ordinary. Like Pope gets so many plaudits every season, and sometimes is just incredible goalkeeper. He made Pope look very ordinary yesterday on a couple of occasions.
But I also do think we need to talk about how good the performance was from Burnley. They went there with the intention to try and defend, and it turned into a bit of a shootout in the end when the game was over. But Burnley were minutes away from their first win of the season, and that's a huge point to go to Leicester and get a point. So enormous result for Burnley, who obviously we know are staring down the barrel of a huge relegation battle. I think people aren't talking enough about Burnley's resolve to kind of be in the position they were for Leicester to have to chase the game.
Yeah, they showed massive fight, didn't they? Like that was, you're 100% right, Damo. That like Brentford in the Liverpool game, Burnley just wouldn't go away. They were playing as well as I've ever seen them play, and not just Burnley well, but like playing really well.
Burnalona.
Bernalona and that corner goal, my God, I've watched that a lot of times and
just the technique. The technique sort of reminded me of that Zidane volley from the Champions League and how he just planted himself and swiveled. The same sort of technique, obviously.
It's like a pull shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I love how he did the down play celebration because he wasn't sure which side the badge was this time. So
yeah, he's like, I'm not going to go for the badge. I'm just going to go for the karma.
That was his. Was that his first appearance or his first start?
I think it might have been his starting debut. Yeah,
his first start. But yeah, pretty incredible goal to score on your starting debut.
And, what would have been a fantastic goal, stolen late by Chris Wood at the end of, basically the last kick of the game, ruled out for offside on review by VAR. Jesse, was this a robbery or what?
Yeah, well, just like the tall timber as he got cut down there. And the poor bloke, he did. He's just a millisecond off with his anticipation. I think if he'd held off just a tiny bit, he would have been okay. But that's the fine lines, and we have to remember that these players can't see anything that's happening behind them a lot of the time. So it's actually impressive that they do manage to stay onside. I'm a massive culprit for going offside in Sunday League, so I appreciate this. But yeah, I'm very, very unlucky, and it was a nice finish as well. So unlucky for Chris.
Well, speaking of robberies, boys, let's get on to the next game on the run sheet. It was a smash and grab by West Ham away at Leeds. Rafinha slotted one away early in a slick Leeds transition, but West Ham got back into it after that deflected Bowen goal midway through the second half. And then who else but Antonio inevitably stepping up for West Ham in stoppage time. Jesse, are we going to have to admit that Antonio is actually good?
I think that more the thing is Tommy C has to admit that Antonio's good. He was messaging in the group earlier today, and I think he's still a bit bewildered. I mean, I remember one of the famous games that I watched with him when I didn't want to watch any more football at 2:30 in the morning, and he's like, "No, we need to go watch West Ham Burnley."
We've all been a culprit from Tommy C's
coercion. We've all been sucked into the Tommy C West Ham vortex at 3 a.m. Watched the game, and incredibly boring game, but I'm pretty sure Antonio scored in it. And I remember distinctly him and the one other West Ham Melbourne guy that was in the room talking about how he's just all physical clumsiness, no end product, but just, what is his position? And very much like they liked him, but very much he felt like a clumsy, right wing back that was sort of getting pushed further forward. And here we are talking about just a brutal, ruthless finisher. And also, he's got a lot of touches of finesse that's come into his game, which I don't know where that's come from. That for me is a mystery. There's a couple of moments where he's swiveling and doing step overs and stuff like that. And there was one shot you might have seen. I'm not sure if it made the highlights package, but he couldn't take it. He didn't want to take it on his left. So he did a 360 and took it on his right. And this is a man of his size running full pace. And he still manages to do a 360 and then stay balanced enough to take the shot. So he's just gone up a complete another level and looks like he's genuinely the real deal. And his hamstrings haven't snapped yet, which maybe the mystery this whole time has been, maybe he's always been great. His hamstrings have always been so bad that he never got any rhythm into his game. But I went outside last night and there was this kind of sort of echoing across from Brunswick to Northcote where I live, and was wondering what it was. And then I realized it was because I was watching Goal Rush, and so was Tommy C a couple of suburbs away. And when Antonio buried that chance, I could hear it a couple of suburbs away. So, yeah.
Boys, if we just talk about, obviously, all this chat's been about West Ham so far, who, ended up getting the 3 points. But if we just talk about Leeds real quick, are they in a lot of trouble? Because, if you look at their results this year, they... Obviously, that loss to Liverpool, they've only got a draw with Burnley and a draw with Newcastle. And then they had a draw with Fulham in the Cup midweek and won on penalties. So Leeds are really struggling at the moment, and they've found themselves in a relegation battle. And the only points they've picked up this season are against teams that they're going to be in that battle with. So Yeah, what's going on at Leeds?
Bielsa didn't. He just didn't add to his squad. He was happy to keep some of those players, which we've often dubbed a handful of them as championship players. He was happy to keep them and sort of even let a couple of them go, and just didn't really add to the squad. And to be honest, like there's definitely sort of parallels with Liverpool last year going on here. Like they don't really have huge defensive stocks. And a couple of injuries has completely cooked it. I mean, I was actually expecting Phillips to play, DJ Calv to play in defense last night. And I think that it was just lucky that I can't remember who the other player was. I think it's lucky actually that they have signed Firpo. He's one signing they've got right as far as bringing someone in. But they didn't have, like, Aileen's out. Dallas, I think, would have had to have gone back, but they filled in with Shackleton was in there, as well as that young guy, the other Cresswell, the Cresswell that a lot of people mistakenly bought in fantasy when they thought they were buying Aaron Cresswell. Yeah, they had a very young guy starting at the back, is what I'm saying. So they look really out of sorts and really, really thin. And going back to the goal with not so much the Antonio goal, but the Bowen goal, the deflected goal, there was no one near him. Like, it was just some of the most absent defending of the entire weekend. It was like the ball was played and Bowen's like, all right, well, if no one's going to come to me, I'm going to come to you. And he literally dribbled into the box and just took a shot and rode his luck, and the ball went in. And it's like, that's kind of, unfortunately, like, I really like Bielsa, and yeah, we've talked a lot about my friend Tommy. He's a big Leeds fan, and we've talked a lot about how good Bielsa is, but you've got to ask questions of the manager there, like, as far as like not bolstering up his squad enough, because it's really, really showing at the moment.
And defensively was where they were really weak. Well, their biggest weakness last season. They dug themselves out of trouble by having these shootouts where games would end 5-3, 4-3. But I think at the end of the season, it was only two other teams that had conceded more goals than Leeds. And where we are now at the start of the season, only Norwich have conceded more goals than Leeds, and Norwich have been walloped twice. So Leeds have conceded 14 goals in their first 6 games, and they've got big defensive issues. And I don't think they're scoring enough goals to dig themselves out of the trouble like they were last year.
I think that's essentially it, Damo. They're just, I think it's a bit early to call it a second season syndrome, or they're necessarily in a funk, or the manager, hasn't brought in enough players or the right players or anything like that. But they just seem to me to be a team that just hasn't got going yet. They haven't got out of the gates yet. And yeah, sure, that's in part due to injuries for sure. But they haven't fully clicked up front like they were last season. But looking ahead to the next couple of fixtures, it's pretty critical that they do get going, because they've got Watford next up in the league, Southampton, then Wolves, then Norwich. So, yeah, a couple of, I think you'd have to say, quite winnable games, but the pressure will be on to make sure they do get wins out of quite a few of those games to get their season going in earnest and start getting some wins on the board.
Yeah, and just last note, are West Ham becoming one of the best counter-attacking sides in the league? Pretty much every one of their goals that I can remember of seeing in the last few weeks have been a quick transition that's ended in a goal. And obviously, having Antonio leading the line that's probably how you're going to need to play, because that's his style. But they seem to be doing it so well.
Yeah, Rice has really taken offense to being rated lowly at his pace on FIFA. So he's basically decided that I'm going to show everybody that I can dribble with the ball and hoover it upfield. But Ben Rama's really added to that, I think, Damo. I think having a guy on your team who can actually run with the ball for a long distance, he is getting the ball to Bowen and to Antonio. And the person who's sliding under the radar a lot was Fornals. I think he's doing really well this year as well. So, yeah, I'm sure Tommy would have more to say. But I think, and just to finish on the lead side of things, guys, with Bielsa, I guess my comments were more around the fact that he is a really well-respected manager. So it's all well and good to have someone at your club who's bringing in the same squad from the year before because, you're a Sean Dyche or something like that. But when you're Bielsa, I felt like if you're bringing in players like Rafinha in the season before, why can't you go out in the most recent transfer market and at least bring in one? Like, just keep chipping away at your squad, because now you're in a position where you have a couple of your key players down and they look so vulnerable. And Colby, these next two fixtures, they should be winnable for Leeds, but this is not a normal Leeds. This is a depleted Leeds. So if you're Watford, you're probably looking at it like, now we can really rip Leeds to shreds.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll be covering it on the pods, and looking forward to how Leeds go for the season. We've got a close eye on them and our boys Watford as well. Let's jump up to the Watford game then, boys, seeing as we're on the topic. This was another really entertaining one. The scoreline didn't tell the whole story here. So you had that Sean Longstaff long bomb, then hits one over the bar after Foster denies St. Gucci 1v1. Foster come up with another big save, but then Sarr, who else for Watford to equalise, and then a dramatic late winner from King, flagged offside only for Murphy 1v1 to be denied after trying a cheeky chip. Boys, what stood out to you in this one? Jesse is shaking your head.
The Murphy one made me laugh, like genuinely laughed, like it was just like he absolutely butchered it. There was almost a bit of a tear as well, because I brought St. Maximum to my fantasy team this week. And I was writing every St. Gucci run up the field. And when they did that errant back pass and he dribbled it up to the keeper, as St. Maximum tends to do sometimes, he overcomplicated the situation with Foster, gets it out of his legs, and then Longstaff just blows his load and misses the goal. But the Murphy one I think is the worst, because they really had the chance to steal it at the very end of the game. It would have been a peak robbery. And Murphy tries to lift it over Foster when it is the classic finesse bottom corner. Just pass it in. Don't overcomplicate it, Murphy. Just pass it in.
Just roll it in.
Roll it in. He absolutely cooked it. Absolutely cooked it.
I only saw the highlights of this game. And yeah, like you said, Colby, I don't think the 1-1 scoreline kind of represents how fun I think this game was to what would have been to watch. It looked like it was end to end of just a really exciting game of football. And from all the good goals this weekend, Longshaft was that was the pick of the bunch. I know there's a joke in here somewhere about Longshaft and his matchup for the weekend was cuck. Yeah. So but we'll leave it at that.
So good. Oh, Gandalf.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
Longshaft, from a long bomb to a team being absolutely blunted, boys. Let's talk about Chelsea and City. This was on paper the standout fixture of the weekend, but Chelsea were just blunted by City in this one. What did you make? Let's just before we get into it, this a lot of people are calling this a sort of title 6-pointer. Is that how it came across to you, Damo?
At this point of the season, I hate when people try and label it like that, because I mean, if you look at this point of the season last year, people were trying to say that Spurs Liverpool was a title decider in round 6, and look how that turned out. So I hate that argument at this point in the season, but it does set a team up. If you get a big win over another team that looked like a chance of winning the league, then it's kind of a momentum shifter more than anything else. So I think it was a hugely important game, but to say it's a title decider or a title 6-pointer is a bit rich, I think, at this point of the season.
And Jesse, Tuchel's winning record against Pep finally broken. I think Tuchel accepted responsibility for this in the post-match presser, saying, tactically he changed up the 3-4-3 to a 3-5-2. He had 3 defensive midfielders on. Do you think he showed a bit too much respect for City?
I think that's it. I think that was what I was going to say. I think a lot of the commentary I've heard since the game was that they showed too much respect, which is interesting considering that how brave Chelsea have been on the most recent occasions, including the Champions League final, of just respect, but just taking on the opposition, using their pace. They just seemed very, very careful. And I thought that was also, it was curious that they were that careful because they were at home. It's not like they were at the Etihad. That would have really disappointed the home fans for Chelsea. But when we talk about title deciders and all this rubbish, I think at this stage of the season, it's more about keeping people in line. And Chelsea, considering the fixture run they're about to go into soon, are looking dangerous in the amount of points they're going to rack up really soon. So if anything, City's done the league a bit of a favour here, because City are going to be their own beast that we're going to have to slow down at times, but Chelsea were threatening to get away as well. So this is what I think we're going to see a lot of, is just like teams pulling each other back into line. So they're not title deciders. They're more just like keeping the race alive, keeping the league interesting. Yeah.
It's a good point, Jesse, because I think it's important to note that Chelsea have had a pretty ridiculously hard fixture list to start the season. And they're 1 point off the top of the league, and they've only conceded 2 goals. So all things considered, if you're a Chelsea fan, yeah, it's hard to take a loss like that. But if things are still going well at Chelsea, but like you said, Jesse, it is City had to do that for the rest of the league, because you can't let anyone get away. As we've seen, if someone gets away early, the league can be over by Christmas sometimes.
Yeah, and wild that was Chelsea's first goal conceded from open play, because like it was a bit of I wouldn't say lucky necessarily, but there was a bit of a deflection in there. Mendy was wrong-footed. So Chelsea's still looking very good defensively, but offensively in this game, no shots on target for the first time under Tuchel. They started with Lukaku and Timo Werner being partnered up top. That was a move that surprised a few people. Jesse, what did you make of the inclusion of Timo and these sort of tactics by Tuchel?
Yeah, well, again, there was some synergies with his previous games where he, like, for some reason, Pep is terrified of Werner, and Tuchel knows it, so he pops him in there for the pace, and he's probably a good foil for Lukaku. And there was one moment at the start of the game which looked like it was going to be a blueprint for the rest of the game, where Werner got away and created sort of a half chance for Lukaku. And we probably will see that more and more in the big games, is that Werner use is just an out-and-out pace merchant. But I think Pep really did his homework on this game, like super, there was more on the line for Pep, I feel, than for Tuchel, and in a way that kind of blindsided Tuchel a little bit as well. So, yeah, I think in the wider context, if I was Chelsea, I just feel that the regret would be that we didn't have enough of a crack, and Pep will be pretty pleased with his work. But have we ever seen a manager more stressed out at 1-0 up than Pep? Mm-hmm. He was just having an absolute meltdown on the sidelines every time there was opportunity. And just going back to that Jesus goal, Jesus, he's like a Robbie Cruz. He goes into a cul-de-sac and he gets stuck. But the difference between Jesus and Robbie Cruz is that Jesus scores. So what we can conclude from this is that Robbie Cruz needs Jesus.
Very good. This game was the dream for your armchair tacticians. The amount of divulging into deep tactics of football that you read about this game, and that people on social media have been talking about, where really at the end of the day, you can talk about this setup, and did Tuchel make this mistake? Did Pep figure him out and do this? For me, the reason City won that game was because of the partnership between Cancelo and Grealish on the left. They're so understanding of each other at the moment. And when Cancelo goes, when Grealish goes inside, when he covers him, when Grealish starts wide, Cancelo goes inside, that partnership they're building on the left is starting to become City's most attacking weapon. And that's why I think Jesus is getting a lot of freedom, because people are overloading that their own right-hand sides, and Jesus is left free to do whatever he wants down that other wing. So
on the far right.
On the far right. So
that's normally really what you associate with Jesus.
Yeah, it was a great for people that love talking about football tactics and the divulging into that kind of stuff. This was the dream matchup for those fans. And it did deliver, because we're sitting here now and we're talking about those kind of tactics.
Well, it's better than talking about a United game where we're trying to figure out what the tactics are.
Exactly.
So it's good just to have it clear. Like I'm like, I understand what the managers are trying to do. Like they're talking about it and they're talking about the shape and the setup. Okay, makes sense. Other results overnight, boys. Just a 2-0 win. Everton over Norwich. This was probably the most straightforward one. There was a penalty shout earlier on, which was given after VAR review. Looked like it was just a bit of a tap, but in any case, it was given and converted by Andros Townsend, and then Doucouré wrapped it up in the 78th minute for Everton. Not too much to say about this one, boys, but what we will do, I guess, is just look forward to the big game, I would say, on paper of the remaining fixtures, which is the North London derby. Arsenal hosting Spurs. Spurs got the highest. Spurs have a shocking away record at Arsenal and are coming off the back of a back-to-back 3-0 losses in the league. Arsenal, meanwhile, have tightened up since losing their first 3 games of the season. Damo, how do you see this one playing out?
It's interesting because both teams obviously not in good form. I think Spurs will get up. I feel like if there's any game for Harry Kane to kind of break his funk, it's going to be a North London derby. So Harry Kane to score and Spurs to win.
Wow, I reckon a 1-1. Yeah, I think that the desperation to screw things up by both teams will be matched, and somehow they'll concede a goal each. So I think 1-1. Well, I mean, what is Arteta ball? What is Arteta ball? Though I guess that's a question for another pod.
We've got listener Sal in the comments, talking about Arteta ball, and he's predicting a 2-0 win for Arsenal, and I'm going to go with Sal on this. I'm thinking that this is the kind of game that Arsenal will step up for. They've got a few narrow wins under their belt now, but they lift for the derby. They're at home. They've got a great record against Spurs at home, and I think they'll do it in the derby.
And boys, what about Britain's weirdest football rivalry coming up on Tuesday morning? Brighton versus Palace.
Arch rivals.
I've never understood this rivalry, but I've got a friend who's a Palace fan, and he genuinely, this is his favorite fixture of any London derby that Palace play in. This is a bigger game, and I don't understand, but it's great. It's great that they love it.
And the Brighton fans, I got a few of them on my social media, and they're all like, Zaha, like he always scores against us. Like Zaha's like the pantomime villain when you're a Brighton fan. So yeah, there's clear like banter between the fans as well. What do they call it? Like
got a jammy Welbeck goal in the 80th minute written all over it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Palace, it's Palace at home, right? I'm pretty sure it's Palace at home. Yeah. This is you talk about strategy. This will be a fascinating battle between the managers. We haven't seen too much of Vieira so far, but what we have seen has been promising for Palace at home. And we talked a couple of weeks ago on the pod about how big Selhurst is when they're bouncing. And then you've got Potter, who's finally
home at Nelson Road.
And then you've got Potter, who finally is getting some spells going with Brighton.
And guys, if Brighton win this, they go top of the league. They're only 2 points behind Liverpool. So if they win on Tuesday morning, Brighton will finish the round at the top of the league. And
come on, Palace.
Not just Brighton and Hove Albion will go top of the league.
It's always unfair. They have 2 football clubs. Brighton and Hove. Yeah. It's always 2v1. I think this will actually be like you said, Jesse. We're talking about tactical matchups. This will be really interesting because Brighton have controlled through midfield in a lot of their games, and that's where they've kind of won their games. Is really bogging down the midfield and kind of, but so have Palace. So it'll be. I want to watch this game, although it's early on a Tuesday morning, because it'll be interesting. Because I feel like whoever gets a hold of the ball within the first 10 to 15 minutes and starts controlling the game from there will just run out with an easy win. And it could be a blowout either way.
It'd be interesting to see if Edouard starts for.
You would think
for-
so. You'd hope so
Palace.
if you were a Palace fan.
I think his cameos off the bench, and considering how much of an impact he's made, the Palace fans will be pushing for a start, and you'd expect in front of the home fans he'd get his start, considering he scored 2 in front of them last time. If he does start, I think it just changes things up a lot, because this fixture in the past has been a lot of huff and no goals, and that's usually because Benteke's up front. So. Can we see a 90 minutes between these two teams if Edouard starts and you've got Gallagher bouncing about in midfield where we don't see goals? I mean, we might see goals for once in this game. So, could be a banger.
Or
There you have it.
It could be a fizzer.
That's football.
Well, that is going to do it for us today, boys. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us. Once again, if you've enjoyed the show, let us know. Gas us up to your mates on social media. Give us a review. Get into our DMs. Just get around us. Subscribe to the pod. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video version of this pod, which we're recording right now. Records live on Sundays, usually around 8 o'clock. And drops about a day or two before the pod appears in your feeds. And we'll link to all of those in the notes to this show. Next week, match day 7 of the Premier League. Until then, enjoy the football.
See?